I'm Dave Sherwin, your host with Stephen Clausnitzer today. Stephen, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Dave. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. And I gave this episode the title "Living Long, Aging Well, and Stem Cell Banking" with Stephen Clausnitzer. Uh, Now, those are interesting topics, and longevity is coming up more and more. And the science of longevity is super fascinating. I mean, 20 years ago, there's like nothing. And all of a sudden, it's just like, billionaires are studying this, money is pouring in, everyone's taking an interest. We all want to live longer and be healthier. Let's hear a bit about your backstory and how you came to be interested in this field.
Sure. I always say keep good friends, right? So my closest friend is a medical physicist. His name is Mark Katakowski, and I sort of always just knew I was going to be an entrepreneur. So I knew that part of it. I didn't know what I was going to do. And then, well, gosh, I've been married for 17 years now, so I know exactly when I met Mark because he was friends with my wife first. I actually met him on my wedding day, at our wedding.
Wow.
And we became fast friends. His wife, Gauchi, my wife, Joanna, all four of us would hang out all the time and, playing a lot of Settlers of Catan and board games, things like that early on. A lot of dinners at each other's houses, things like that. And this is before we had any children, anything like that. And Mark is not just a medical physicist, he's working in biology, studying stem cells for, when we started the company, it had been almost 20 years he had been studying stem cells. 50 years ago, we didn't know what a stem cell was. So he's been there
Right.
from the very beginning until to now. Now we're seeing lots of clinical applications, et cetera. So you asked me how I got into this. I really got into this because Mark's my closest friend, and one day, and we had worked on two other projects together prior to this one. But one day we were on a phone call, and Mark, out of nowhere, started telling me about some of his research. And in his research, he was taking stem cells from mice and treating mice with strokes. And he was seeing that
Interesting.
the mice that did the best and healed the fastest and had the best recoveries were the ones that received stem cells from younger mice. And so
Okay.
Mark started looking into this and realized that these stem cells decline in function and in number with age. So the older you get, the worse
Makes
your stem
sense.
cells become. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he became convinced, and others have too, that having access to your own young stem cells would be a benefit in the future. So we're on a phone
Okay.
we're at a phone call one night, and just out
Hey,
of nowhere,
hold on,
yeah, go
hold
ahead.
on.
Yeah,
I'm going to rudely cut you off, but hold that
go
thought
ahead. Yeah, go for it.
because I think it's worth you defining what a stem cell is for our audience. We
Sure.
sometimes talk over people's heads, and I think before we carry on, give us your best definition of what a stem cell is.
Sure. So a stem cell is a cell in your body. You can think of cells in your body as sort of like the building blocks of your body, the bricks that build the house that is our body. And a stem cell is a cell that can be many other types of cells. So you many tissue types. So you can have the ones that we're talking about storing at Forever Labs are two types: hematopoietic stem cells, which build your blood, support your immune system, and mesenchymal stem cells, which can be any part of the mesenchyme. They build your bone, connective tissue, vasculature, etc. So they're extremely important. And the problem is like, I know a huge part of what you do, Dave, is to help people extend their healthy lifespans, not just lifespans. You want people to be able to live
That's right.
healthier, longer,
Healthy
right?
longevity. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what happens is people nowadays, we live so long that we have these new things that are essentially called age related diseases, cardiovascular disease,
Yeah.
cancers, Alzheimer's. I mean, it's a relatively new phenomenon in the sense that they're so common because we are living
Right.
so long. And what happens is at the cellular level, these cells, which, as I mentioned, are the building blocks of your body, you'll have dysfunction at the cellular level. And what that does is it leads to dysfunction at the tissue level, which leads to disease and eventually to failure of the entire organism. So
Okay. So
really
one
important. Yeah.
one
Go ahead.
quick question about that. So a stem cell cannot become anything. So not all a stem cell can't become a brain cell or a bone cell or a blood cell. So they're not 100% universal. Is that right?
No. So there are stem cells that are called pluripotent stem cells, which are like when you're born, you're basically full of pluripotent stem cells that are building all these tissues that can be almost anything.
Okay.
The cells we're talking about are called multipotent. They can be many things, but you're right. A mesenchymal stem cell can't build a pancreas.
Okay.
It's just, that's not how it works. But what's so interesting about the cells that I'm talking about that we bank is that they tend to support immune function, um, and bone, vasculature, all these things that tend to compromise severely as you get older. So they're really important. But you're right, they're not.
They're
It's not
not
sort of a,
universal.
yeah, and it's not like people always ask, "Oh, I bank my stem cells, I'm okay now." No, there's many other things you're going to have to be concerned with as you get
Okay.
older. But
Okay.
we believe it's really important to have this asset set aside, these
Yeah.
mesenchymal stem cells, which are not pluripotent but multipotent,
Okay.
so that you can either treat disease, or what we're really interested in is preventing it. If we can use these cells so that you don't
Okay.
have a stroke, so that you don't have cardiovascular disease, so you don't have osteoarthritis, all of these things, we are interested in using these cells prophylactically or to preventatively.
Okay. Thank you. That was an excellent. I understand this topic better now myself. So hopefully the audience
Cool.
does as well. And so back to the phone call.
Yeah, so it was just, we weren't setting out to start a stem cell banking company. We wanted to find one. So he started telling me
You're
about
right.
how these cells decline in number and function with age, and he was like, "I really want to bank my stem cells."
Hmm.
And he told me all about the how the mice were doing better when he was treating them with younger cells. And by the end of the conversation, I was like, "I want to store mine too. Like, let's do this. Let's find it." So we started looking for a company that would do this for us, and we couldn't find one. It didn't exist. And so I reached out to a friend of mine who's an orthopedic surgeon. His name's Dr. Laith Farjo, great doctor in Michigan. And I asked him, it's like, "Hey, Laith, I have a funny question. Will you take out my bone marrow so that I can store my stem cells?" And Laith was like, "It's not that strange of a question.
Huh.
I do it all the time, not to
Oh,
store,
interesting.
but what doctors, I didn't know then, and now I'm very familiar with it. But then I didn't know, is that orthopedic surgeons, sports medicine doctors, pain management physicians, all across the country are taking out bone marrow at the point of care. They'll put it in a centrifuge, concentrate it. Takes about 5-10 minutes, and then they introduce the mononuclear cells from the bone marrow into areas of injury. So if you have a bad shoulder, they'll inject it into your shoulder to help promote healing, decrease inflammation. And so it's already happening. Like, people are doing it all over the country, but no one was storing any of it for later.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
and so that's when the entrepreneurial light bulb sort of went off. And I said, Mark, my whole background's in team leadership, business development. Mark's whole background obviously is in biology and medical physics. So took our sort of backgrounds, and this company was born out of that. We opened one clinic in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and
Yeah.
people started flying in from mostly like San Francisco, LA, to store their stem cells with us. And
Yeah. Yeah.
now we're in 20 states, and a lot has happened in between that I'm happy to get into. But that's sort of how we started it. But yeah, my background, like, I come from a family of entrepreneurs, and I just kind of always knew that that's what I wanted to do.
I saw that in your bio. Even your grandfather. And did you say grandfather is plural?
Plural, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and both of them emigrated to the U.S. One from Germany, one from Mexico,
Okay.
and both of them started their own companies. As a kid, I grew up hanging out in their companies, very different companies. One was an auto repair sort of shop, and the other was made parts for like the auto industry, et cetera. But
Okay.
just saw them and the joy they took in employing other people, and I just knew, I kind of always knew I wanted to do it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I caught the entrepreneurial bug a long time ago. I've been self-employed since 1993,
That's
but
awesome.
I didn't get I didn't get smart and get into the health industry till 2009, and that's when I really felt like I found my calling.
Hmm.
I love entrepreneurship like you. I love the whole concept of creation, of building something. I also have kind of taken a unique approach to it with it as well, in that I also love helping people in developing countries, and so.
Oh, cool.
I have employed people offshore for a very long time. Before it was cool, I had assistants in India and the Philippines, and I'd go to those countries, and a lot of people would criticize that, like, keep all the work here in the U.S. But I get that too, and I
Hmm.
do have that concept in mind as well. And so what we do is no more than 5% of our revenue goes offshore.
Okay.
But that 5% changes people's lives. I mean, I've worked beside people who are in homes that we would consider to be the worst possible tract homes, that their power goes off regularly, their internet connection is terrible, and they are trying to eke out a living with US dollars. And if they can do it, it changes their life. And so that's an interesting little side I just thought I'd share, because
No, I think it's great.
people who, yeah.
I think, Dave, it's one thing to have the entrepreneurial bug, but it's another thing to feel like you're using it towards a positive end. And
Right.
you obviously are. And if you can have an impact on a life, a human, doesn't matter, where they live. I think that's pretty remarkable. So hats off to you there. But I also think the biggest thing, if there are like budding entrepreneurs listening to this at all, is it's so wonderful to have a calling. If you're working, I can't
Right.
imagine, building a company just to make money, but if you're trying to solve a problem that you feel is important, and I think I said it in my bio to you, I really do believe that aging is the biggest problem humanity's ever faced, is
Yeah.
age-related disease and aging. If we can solve that, I mean, what a remarkable thing. So yeah, I think having a sense of purpose is very, very important. And it's one of the things I preach to our entire team is, work with a sense of purpose. It's important stuff.
I love that. Let me back up a little bit about the stem cells. One of the things that intrigues me about what you're doing is the obvious implication that the person is banking their own stem cells. Now, when an NBA athlete blows out their knee and goes up to Seattle or flies to Japan to have stem cell surgery, tell us about that. I kind of assumed that stem cells, because of the generic nature of a stem cell, that we could just take anyone's stem cells and just use them to either repair that blown out knee, grow collagen that wouldn't grow back into the kneecap, whatever the case might be.
Sure.
But there must be obvious reasons. I would guess DNA. I don't know. But tell us why you have to, why you need to bank your own, rather than, why can't we just set up some generic stem cell bank that has ones that'll work for anybody?
Yeah, I mean, trust me, people are trying. The unfortunate reality is that, well, first of all, someone else's stem cells can be beneficial. But what happens is they're often introduced to let's say, again, we use a shoulder. Let's say an athlete, we'll stick with an athlete, has a shoulder injury. You introduce a donor stem cell line. The scientific term would be an allogeneic stem cell line, meaning someone else's. And it decreases inflammation. It's great. The cells will go there, they'll decrease inflammation. But what often happens, more often than not, is that your immune system recognizes those stem cells as foreign, not as your own, and will rid them from the body. So they don't get a chance to engraft, stick around, regrow healthy tissue. They had a positive impact, though. They decreased inflammation, but they didn't stick around long enough to do even more what they should be doing, which is regrowing healthy tissue. If you have your own cells, they will engraft, and you can have a longer, more sustained benefit from the treatment. Additionally, if you had your own younger cells, let's say you're not an athlete now. Let's say that you're a 65-year-old that has osteoarthritis of your shoulder, and you had banked your stem cells when you were 40 years old. Well, now you've got cells that are younger, more efficacious, and they're autologous. Autologous means your own. So you've got autologous 40-year-old Dave stem cells, and you're now 65 years old and you're having shoulder issues. You can culture expand those cells, grow them, and reintroduce them into the area of injury to help promote healing. That's what we're really interested in at Forever Labs is, can we use your own younger cells, 20 years after you bank them, so that you can have the best possible outcome. What we're most interested in is you not having osteoarthritis of the shoulder. So what if we could take Dave's 40-year-old cells, or let's say even 55, let's take your 55-year-old cells. Let's say you're 70 years old now, and we can grow those and start reintroducing them on a schedule, so that you have stronger bone. I always use the example, my biggest influence in my entire life, certainly from a business standpoint, is my grandfather, Clausnitzer. And he died several years after falling on the ice and breaking his tailbone. After he broke his tailbone, he was pretty much ridden to a bed or a chair, stop being
Wow. Yeah.
active, and eventually
That's
it
a
has
terrible
cardiovascular
injury.
problems. Yeah,
And all of us who have fallen on our tailbone and even injured the bone
yes,
know that
it's
it can be
painful.
as bad as a break.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that's a bad fall.
So what if, Dave, what if like my grandfather had been reintroducing his cells on a schedule, and has less porous bone, stronger bone, because these cells build your bone. They create osteoblasts, which build your bone. So
Okay.
what if he falls on that ice and it just has a bruise on his tailbone and is able to recover? Go
Right.
at that age, he was still working, can go back to where his brain stays sharp. He's able to be
Right.
mobile, and maybe he gets another 5, maybe even 10 years of healthy lifespan from that. So I think that's what we're interested in: is can we reintroduce these cells so you have a stronger immune system, stronger bones, stronger connective tissue, stronger vasculature, and then extend your health span. Are we saying that we can make people live forever? No, but I know we're called Forever Labs, so it may be a misnomer. But if we can just get people to live healthier longer, myself included, that'll be a huge win.
Have
So
you
that's
read
what we're
Homo
interested in.
Deus by Harari?
No, I haven't, but no, I haven't, but I'm familiar.
Yeah, yeah. Very interesting. And he explores the current being what I bet he wrote that 3 years ago. But the science at the time of longevity, of living forever, and super interesting book. I highly recommend it to anyone listening, because this is a really great emerging science. One of the questions I want to just poke and prod a little bit into this
Mhm.
arena with you on is, how theoretical is this? Um, Obviously, it's so new, and
Mhm.
we don't have someone who gave up their stem cells 25 years ago
Mhm.
who's now reintroducing them. So how much of this has been proven out? I imagine some of the testing must be redoing this after a couple years or 3 years or 4 years. Tell me about the theory versus the practical science and what we know
Yeah.
right now.
Okay. Good question. What we know right now for sure is that these cells decline in number and function with age. It's a fact. So the
Yeah.
older you get, the worse your cells are going to be. We
Okay.
also know that we can store them in liquid nitrogen for decades with little to no degradation. As long as they're
Okay.
frozen properly and thawed properly, the amount of time that they're in liquid nitrogen is really inconsequential.
Okay.
So we know those two things, which are sort of the
Yeah.
core principles behind what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
We know these cells get worse, and we know we can keep them safe now.
Yeah.
We also know that we can grow them to huge numbers. So you can take a small amount of these cells and grow them to hundreds of millions of cells.
Okay.
Um, and so we know those three things. Now, as far as how they're being used therapeutically, when we first started the company back in 2000 and late 2014,
Okay.
um, there's maybe, I think I remember that the initial marketing material said there was like 300 clinical trials or something like that using
Wow.
these cells. Now there's thousands of clinical trials using them, and
Okay.
a number of them are in phase 3. And these aren't fringe diseases. They're things like cardiovascular disease are in phase 3, which is the phase right before clinical adoption. So phase 3, we have osteoarthritis phase 3. We've got stroke is in phase 3, and then Alzheimer's. There's actually approval in Japan using these cells to treat early onset Alzheimer's. It doesn't cure the Alzheimer's, but it dramatically slows the progression. It's pretty important stuff.
Okay.
So
Okay.
what we're finding is that it's working in clinical trials.
Okay.
So we know that they get worse when you get older. We know that we can store them, and we know that they're being successfully deployed therapeutically. So all these
Yeah.
things are really exciting. Now, the theoretical part is, can we use these cells preventatively? Can we use these cells to slow down the onset of age-related disease and decline? That
Uh-huh.
we know works in animal models. So we've done studies where we've been able to get mice to live like 28% longer using these cells.
Wow.
Excuse me, which is a significant number. But will that translate to humans? I don't know the answer to that. And for
Okay.
anyone to know the answer to that would take, as you can imagine, 20, 30, 40 years.
That's right. So the science, so the concept is solid.
Mhm.
The research is being done, and it's still an emerging science, basically, right?
It is. But I think the jury is sort of in on
Okay.
them being therapeutically efficacious. We know that they are. Um, the question now becomes, if you're using them to treat cardiovascular disease, is it more efficacious than standard of care? if you're using them to treat a stroke, is it more
Ah,
efficacious than standard of care? We know it's safe. We know
right.
it's efficacious. We know it's effective. Now they have to show that it's more effective than the current standard of care.
Okay.
There's I forget the physician's name at Stanford. He's using these. I think it's Gary Steinberg is his name at Stanford, using these using stem cells to treat people after stroke. And these are people that have
Okay.
hemiparalysis, so half of their
Yeah.
side is paralyzed.
Right.
They reintroduce mesenchymal stem cells into the infarct area of the brain, and they regained motion of these paralyzed limbs.
Wow.
It's amazing stuff. And we just at Forever Lab strongly believe that people are going to be really well suited if they have their own best possible cells banked.
Okay, so now the next question I have,
Mhm.
I can picture Peter Thiel getting in his jet in Loma Linda or wherever he lives, Malibu, and
Sure.
flying to Ann Arbor,
Mhm.
a-
Well,
and
you wouldn't have to, because we have clinics in all over California now.
okay, but still, is this a rich person's game, or is it something? It sounds expensive.
Yeah. When we first started it, the first interview we ever did was with NPR, and it was with Michigan Radio, and they asked, "Are you creating something for an elite? Are you building an elite class of citizens that will have?" I'm not interested in that. I come from a middle class family. My co-founder, Mark, does too. His family's all teachers. We want everyone to be able to have access to this. Um, Now, that said, when we first started, I think it was $5,000 to sign up. We've been able to get the cost down and we'll constantly be working on that. We've been able to get it down to $2,500
Okay.
to do it. And then after someone banks their cells, they have to once a year, not once a month. I want to be very clear. Once a year, they pay $250 for storage.
For ongoing. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or someone like Peter Thiel or someone of that nature, if they signed up, they would probably opt for the lifetime plan, and someone pays $9,000 upfront, and then they never have to pay the $250 a year.
Okay.
So for most people, it would be $2,500 upfront, and then once a year, $250.
Okay. And for those listening, who don't know who Peter Thiel is, he's another thought leader in the space of longevity. He's a billionaire who is he personally has very, very high goals. And I think he wants to live to be 200 or something.
Great, great, and
So
look, Peter and others are putting their money where their mouth is, right? And there's a
yeah, yeah,
lot.
he is.
There are a lot more venture capital dollars going into um, scientists and companies that are researching interventions to slow down the onset of aging and age-related disease, and that's a really good thing.
Yeah.
When we started the company, the idea of having a longevity company was a fringe, strange idea. It's way less so now. It's much more
Mm.
accepted, and it's a very good thing.
Interesting. And I take a slightly different the way NPR phrased that question was a little bit different than my question, because I actually appreciate the billionaires and millionaires of the world who can afford to experiment and start things that later on become expensive, become affordable for the masses. And so it
Mhm.
sounds like that's what you're describing, is that right now the price is already going down. Over time, this can become affordable for everyday people. So I just wanted to point that out, that I am not one of these people who is angry at wealthy people or thinks they don't deserve their money or any of those things. I think that
Sure.
wealthy people have done wonderful things for society, and that starting off with a lot of money, it's why we can have a flat screen TV that's 60 inches wide for 300
Yeah.
bucks from Costco, right? Like
Sure.
someone had to pay 10 grand first. Uh,
Yes, yes, that's very true. And with us, we're really trying to bring it down with economies of scale. So the more people we have banking, the more of a uh, the revenue we have coming in on the annual storage fee comes in, and the more we can lower the cost up front to people. So we're trying, with economies of
and,
scale and increasing efficiencies to get
yeah.
the price down. So we've cut
And
it
I
in
like
half.
that.
Yeah.
That is not how a lot of people work. It's why Jeff Bezos is a millionaire. I'm sorry, a multi-billionaire, because at Amazon, he was always trying to bring prices down. And Stephen, back to the entrepreneurial thing. Um,
Excuse me.
I have people in my own world that over time, I start to understand that what they want is more and more money. There's just a greed to what they're doing. I cut off a very important business relationship just 6 months ago because what I realized about this person, actually a business coach I was using, and I used for 2 years. It's fantastic. But I ending the relationship because of that very thing, that I could sense that it was all about getting more and not about what you're talking about. So I love the model. I love the fact that your goal is to bring it to the
To be
masses.
clear, like I am all about getting more, but what is more? I'm all about getting more time with my children. I'm all about getting more time with my wife,
Yeah.
more time enjoying my life, and that means
Yeah.
more time. I'm all
And
about
I
getting
meant,
more time.
yeah, I meant more out of each person. That's kind of
Yeah.
a MO that what you're doing, you're trying to make it easier and easier for each passing kind of business generation, so to speak, of buyers to be able to afford what
Yes.
you're doing. So I love that.
Thanks.
You're talking about what you want to do for your family and things like that, though.
Hmm.
Let me get a little bit personal with you.
Sure.
You're a thought leader in the space of aging and health now. What are your personal goals and what are you looking to achieve health wise in your life?
Yeah. First of all, I could drop about 15 right now.
Okay.
Pounds,
Okay.
but I am working on it. I've got a personal trainer that I work with, great guy named Jay Fogg. Give a shout out to Jay.
Okay.
And we are working on strength training, now working into diet, but every single week, twice a week, working with him, playing tennis, trying to stay active. Personally, as far as other interventions, I get asked this a lot. I don't really take any sort of supplements, anything like
Oh, we
that.
got to change that.
Yeah, I know. I know. I looked into the Nairobi. We'll talk.
I'm
But
sending you a $100 gift certificate. We send all of our guests a $100 certificate to the store as a thank you,
cool.
so you can start there.
Thank you. I will. Um, I, uh, I meditate twice a day. I, I
Let
just
me
try.
pause you there. So
Yeah.
almost every time I hear about someone meditating twice a day, it means they do transcendental meditation or TM. Is that what you
It's,
do?
yeah, it is. Yeah. It
Fantastic.
is.
Fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. It's been a real game changer. Um,
Okay.
those are the things I do right now. A lot of my life revolves around running the company. It's funny, like
Yeah.
Mark and I joke often that we're aging faster by trying to help people live longer.
Right.
But because we're working so hard on the company. And then I have three small children, 11, 8, and 4 years old, and they take up a tremendous amount of my time in such a good way. Very active with them. I mean, my evening tonight will be basketball, like playing basketball with them outside
Fun.
or etc. So pretty active person, try to stay mentally active, take good care of my brain. And, my physical health is a work in progress, but I think it's going in the right direction.
Well, as far as longevity goes, you're doing well to only have 15 pounds to lose. We know from the American Heart Association that they really feel strongly that anything over 20 pounds is where you start to shorten your lifespan. And I also know from my personal certification in nutrition, et cetera, that there is a sweet spot. There's many people who look at Instagram influencers and their six-pack abs and think that's the epitome of health. It's actually not.
Mm.
There is a price to being lean. And so there are people who have just a little bit of extra weight, 5 or 10 or 15 pounds, are much more healthy than they might even feel. And so that is a true concept. Those people that are super lean, especially those like fitness models, professional athletes, actually have lowered immune systems, more likely to get sick, more likely to stay sick longer, and actually don't have longevity. So there's kind of this bell curve
Mhm.
uh, between being obese and being ultra lean, where there's a sweet spot. So you might be doing
Yeah,
better in your health
maybe I'm all
than
right.
you think.
Yeah, maybe I am. I know, we've been doing lots of weight training, and I think it's so much fun. And I've never been someone who enjoyed going to the gym or anything like that. And I never really lifted weights before, but we started off,
Okay.
and a lot of people will scoff and think, this isn't a big number, but to me it is. We started, and I had a hard time like putting up 130 pounds even, and now I'm up to 190 in a bench press. And it just feels good to make in anything in your life. It feels good to have goals and to achieve them. And so our goal is 200,
Oh,
it's a lot. It's fun.
you'll hit 225.
Awesome.
Keep going. Keep going.
I'm in, Dave.
Put 225 plant 225 in your head.
Okay. It's
You
fair.
will get there. Look,
I
I did CrossFit for years. I've seen tons of people enter the gym, and hitting 135 is a starting goal for a lot of people. It's a decent amount of weight to lift, especially when you're not used to that type of a movement.
Yep.
But I'm telling you, once you can do 135,
I'm up to
you're
190 and like it feels natural. It's
oh
starting to
yeah,
feel
yeah. It'll
really
keep
natural.
going. But there's just something awesome about having two 45-pound plates on each side and doing that 225.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. Jay talks about that with me. I think that's how they start the combine, right? Is like with that. Anyways,
Yeah,
it's really
it
fun.
is.
It's a new joy. It's a new joy in my life is exercise in a gym.
Yeah.
I've always loved playing sports and doing things like that, but I've never been someone really interested in going to a gym, and it's been really rewarding.
And the cool thing is you're enjoying it. That's the main thing. You found something, you're enjoying it. It's giving you joy, and it's working for you. And that's the big part of it is we have people all the time that their big struggle is fitness. And it's really difficult as a coach because there's so many options, and a lot of people are uncomfortable going in the gym. And so it's kind of uh, I think sometimes people it's analysis paralysis. There's so many things you can do, and they just can't pick
Yeah.
one that they're going to enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it would be really bad if you pick the wrong something you don't enjoy, and then you're discouraged from doing it.
Yes.
Yeah, I've learned I really love tennis. I love golf too, but who has the time? But yeah, there's lots of things I enjoy doing outside, hiking, and um, yeah, tons of
All with
travel. All
all
these
with the
things
goal of what? What's the goal? Why are you doing all these things?
to live healthier longer, and and for me, it's so I can have more time on this rock to achieve more and more of the things I want to do. I have like you. I want to help people. I want to see my kids grow into healthy, productive human beings. I want to see my grandkids do the same, ideally. Yeah, uh, my goal is to stick around here.
By the
And
way, speaking of longevity, you're making me feel a little bit old. Just not on purpose by any means, but you talk about having a 4-year-old. My 4-year-old grandson just finished his soccer season, and my wife
it's
and I
awesome.
just loved going to those games and watching that little
Yeah.
crowd of kids running around the ball. It was a blast. But I got grandkids the same age as your kids.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you look like obviously you're very healthy and you're able to run around with your grandkids. How cool is that? So
I love it.
you're probably able to be more active with your grandkids than most dads are with their kids, given your health. And that's awesome. That's where I want to be, right? I want to be able to, if I wanted to, like coach my grandkids,
Yeah,
soccer team,
absolutely.
things like that, and still have that sort of energy. So yeah, I think we're on the same page there. I have a huge motivation to stick around so I can see future generations of my family. It's a big motivator for me.
Well, I love it. Stephen, thanks for coming on the show. It's been really interesting. You've opened my eyes. I was super excited to learn about stem cell banking. You've opened up the hood and told us all about it, everything, including the cost, the whole bit. Now, again, as you mentioned, people don't have to go to Ann Arbor. You have 20 places they can go to. So I assume they can just go to your website and find everything they need to know.
Yeah, just go to foreverlabs.com. There'll be a box that pops up where you can ask questions. It's not a robot. There's actually a human being on the other side of that. So that's probably a good way to learn more.
Fantastic. And Forever Labs, with a name like Forever Labs, do you have other plans for longevity products, or are you going to kind of stick in your lane? Anything you want to share about other things coming up?
Yeah. So, we are a longevity company that is focused on autologous interventions, meaning using your biology to help you. We've got three different patents in that space. One of them we're commercializing right now. It's called SuperShot PRP. You can go to supershotprp.com to learn more. But if you've ever heard of PRP, you mentioned like athletes going over to overseas. Decades ago, Kobe Bryant had to go to Germany to have a PRP treatment. Now it's commonplace all over the United States. People are using PRP. We have a PRP product that includes autologous extracellular vesicles like exosomes. Your own exosomes are added to the PRP. It's remarkable. Just go to the website and learn more. That's one thing we're doing. We're trying to get more into not just banking, but like therapeutic applications that you can use today. but all of it around using your own biology.
Fantastic. Well, Stephen, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Dave. I enjoyed it.
And I think you're going to bench. Let's see. When did you start lifting?
Oh gosh, maybe 6 months ago. Not even
6 months ago. I think it'd be perfectly reasonable that you shoot me an email in about spring of next year, telling me when you do 225.
All right, man. You got it.
I would love that.
Yeah, expect it sooner.
It's a challenge. I'm giving you the challenge. I'm planting it in your
Bring
head.
it. I love it. Thanks, man.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Stephen.
Thank you, Dave. Take care.
For those of you listening, this is Dave Sherwin wishing you health and success.